Imagine living in a world where every thought is watched. Where even your silence can betray you. Where truth is not what is, but what the rulers decide it shall be. This is the world of 1984, George Orwell's haunting vision of the future. A world where control is absolute, and freedom is an illusion so fragile that even dreaming of it becomes a crime. George Orwell wrote 1984 in 1948, in the shadow of 2 world wars and the rise of totalitarian regimes. He had witnessed the power of propaganda, the distortion of truth, and the weaponization of fear. And he imagined, what if these forces didn't end with war, but became the foundation of society itself? The result was a novel not of fantasy, but of terrifying realism, a world that feels uncomfortably close to our own. In this audiobook journey, we'll not only walk through Winston Smith's life, the lonely man who dared to rebel, but also peel back the layers of Orwell's warnings, about surveillance, truth, and the fragility of human thought. So take a deep breath. And step with me into the gray, suffocating streets of Oceania. The city smelled of dust and decay. Concrete buildings stood like tombs, their walls plastered with faded posters, "Big Brother is watching you." Everywhere, the same eyes. Calm. Cold. Omnipresent. In this land, the past has no certainty. Records are rewritten daily. Memories are dangerous. And loyalty to the party is all that keeps you alive. This is Airstrip 1, once known as London, now just a province of a vast empire called Oceania. The people here live under the rule of the party, led by a figure no one has ever seen, Big Brother. He smiles from posters, speaks from screens, and watches from every corner of your life. Privacy is extinct. Every home has a telescreen, a device that both broadcasts propaganda and spies on the citizens. Even your heartbeat could betray you. The party controls not just your actions, but your thoughts. To think against them is thought crime. And thought crime is punishable by vaporization, a quiet erasure, as if you never existed. Among these millions of obedient faces is one man, Winston Smith. He's not a hero in the traditional sense. He's frail, quiet, and burdened with the knowledge that something, somewhere, has gone terribly wrong. By day, Winston works at the Ministry of Truth, a towering building where the past is rewritten to match the party's ever-changing version of reality. His job? To erase old newspaper records and replace them with corrected versions, so that the party is always right. If the party says the enemy has changed, history is rewritten to show it was always that way. If they reduce the food ration, the records are altered to say it's an increase. And Winston does this work with quiet despair, a man who helps build the illusion he secretly despises. He knows that 2 + 2 still makes 4, but in Oceania, truth is not a fact. It's a decision. And to even remember the real world before the party is an act of rebellion. In a moment of silent defiance, Winston buys a small notebook from a dusty shop. An ordinary object, but in this world, it's forbidden. He opens it, takes up an old pen, and writes the words that will change his life forever, "Down with Big Brother." A simple phrase, yet enough to destroy him. For the first time, he has thought against the party. He has committed thought crime. And as he hides the diary in a corner of his flat, he knows that one day, they'll find it, and him. But something inside him refuses to surrender. That small act of writing becomes his proof of humanity. A whisper of truth in a world built on lies. Then comes Julia, a young woman from the fiction department. Winston believes she's a spy at first, but when she secretly passes him a note that says, "I love you," his world cracks open. They meet in secret, in the woods, in rented rooms, in hidden corners of the city. In a world where love is forbidden, their affection becomes an act of rebellion. For the first time, Winston feels alive. He tastes real chocolate, smells real coffee, and learns what it means to desire something for himself. But beneath their moments of stolen joy lies the shadow of Big Brother, watching, waiting. Their relationship isn't just romance. It's protest. In a regime that demands love only for the party, to love another person is to defy the state itself. And that's what makes it so dangerous. One day, Winston and Julia are approached by a man named O'Brien, a high-ranking party member who seems to share their hatred for Big Brother. O'Brien invites Winston to join a secret organization called the Brotherhood, a resistance movement said to be led by a man named Emmanuel Goldstein, the party's ultimate enemy. Winston is elated. At last, someone understands. Someone fights back. But O'Brien's calm eyes hide a truth Winston cannot see. When Winston and Julia are finally caught, arrested by the thought police in their rented room, it is O'Brien who stands over them. The rebellion, the brotherhood, the illusion of hope, all of it was a trap. And now, Winston will face not death, but something far worse, the systematic destruction of his mind. So far, we've walked through the first half of Orwell's masterpiece, a story of quiet rebellion in a world without truth. But the real power of 1984 lies not just in what happens to Winston, but in what it says about us. The party's greatest weapon isn't violence. It's the control of reality itself. In every totalitarian system, control is never limited to power over the body. It extends into the mind, into the invisible landscape of human thought. And this is where the party's genius lies. George Orwell built a world where oppression isn't just political, but psychological. Where truth itself bends under the weight of authority. Let's dive into the core of this nightmare, the machinery that keeps Oceania running. A system so complete that even rebellion becomes predictable, even resistance becomes part of control. The first and most terrifying concept is Big Brother. He is not a man. He is a myth, a symbol of absolute authority. His face, calm and all-seeing, appears everywhere. On walls, on coins, on the telescreen that dominates every living room. But what makes Big Brother powerful is not his presence, it's his uncertainty. No one knows if he truly exists. And that's precisely the point. In a world where the line between real and unreal is blurred, belief becomes control. The party doesn't need Big Brother to exist physically, they only need people to believe he does. Because belief creates obedience. And obedience, over time, becomes faith. Winston once wondered if Big Brother would ever die. The answer, of course, is no. Because Big Brother is not alive in the human sense, he is immortal in the mind of the collective. He is an idea. And ideas cannot die, only replaced by stronger ones. Another pillar of Orwell's world is thought crime, the crime of thinking. Imagine a society where your own mind is the enemy. Where even a flicker of doubt, an unspoken word, or a fleeting expression can destroy you. The party calls it face crime when your face betrays your feelings. Even a twitch, a look of disapproval, can mark you as disloyal. In this world, language itself becomes a battlefield. To control thought, the party must first control the tools of thought, words. And that's where Newspeak comes in. Newspeak is not just a language, it is a weapon. Its goal is simple, to make certain thoughts impossible. If there's no word for freedom, then the idea of freedom cannot survive. If rebellion is untranslatable, then rebellion itself dies before it's born. The party understands what philosophers and tyrants alike have known for centuries, that language doesn't just describe reality, it shapes it. By shrinking vocabulary, they shrink imagination. By eliminating nuance, they eliminate dissent. And that's the genius of Orwell's invention, a world where even thinking differently becomes literally unspeakable. Then there's doublethink, perhaps the most chilling concept of all. Doublethink is the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs and accept them both as true. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. To survive in Oceania, you must not only accept these contradictions, you must believe them. It's not enough to obey the party. You must believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5 if they say so. You must erase your own logic, your own memory, and replace it with the version given to you. This is not just brainwashing, it's self-erasure. The party doesn't need to destroy every heretic, they teach people to destroy themselves from within. To doubt one's senses is the first step to loyalty. Orwell's insight here is terrifying because it feels familiar. Every age, in its own way, practices doublethink. Governments, corporations, even individuals, justify lies as truths when convenient. We tell ourselves comforting contradictions, that we value freedom while trading it for security, that we seek truth while drowning in curated information. The line between Orwell's fiction and our reality is thinner than we'd like to admit. Now, let's turn to the 4 great institutions that rule Oceania, each named with cruel irony. The Ministry of Truth, which spreads lies. The Ministry of Peace, which wages war. The Ministry of Love, which enforces torture. The Ministry of Plenty, which manages scarcity. Each of these names embodies the principle of doublethink. By naming evil as good, the party teaches citizens not to trust language itself. The Ministry of Truth, where Winston works, is perhaps the most symbolic of all. It controls the past. Every record, every photograph, every statistic, rewritten to match the party's current narrative. If the party says that last year's chocolate ration was increased, then it was, even if everyone remembers it was decreased. Memory becomes irrelevant because there's no proof to contradict the new version. The past, in Orwell's world, is fluid. It exists only in written records, and since those can be altered, the past can be rewritten endlessly. Winston once wrote in his secret diary, "He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past." And that line captures the essence of total control. When people lose their grip on history, they lose their ability to compare, to question, to resist. Next comes the Ministry of Love, ironically the most feared building in Oceania. There are no windows. No laughter. No affection. Only pain. It's here that the party performs its final miracle, transforming rebellion into devotion. Through torture, through fear, through psychological destruction, they make you love Big Brother. It's not enough to obey, obedience must be voluntary. The body must surrender, but so must the soul. And so the Ministry of Love becomes the dark heart of Orwell's vision, a place where love is manufactured through terror. Where loyalty is proven not through trust, but through betrayal. Finally, there is the 2 minutes hate, a daily ritual that reveals the party's mastery over emotion. Every citizen gathers to scream at a screen, to pour their rage upon Emmanuel Goldstein, the supposed enemy of the state. The film shows his face, mocking, calm, while crowds howl and curse, losing themselves in collective fury. For a brief moment, citizens feel alive, united by hate. And then, just as suddenly, the face of Big Brother appears, and the rage melts into love and relief. The party has transformed anger into devotion. By directing emotions toward an enemy, they strengthen their grip over the people. And Winston, even in his secret doubts, is not immune. He feels it too, that mix of hatred and belonging, the frightening ease with which passion can be manipulated. At its core, 1984 is not only about totalitarian politics. It is about the fragility of truth itself. The party's greatest invention isn't surveillance, it's confusion. When every source of truth contradicts the other, when lies and facts blend seamlessly, people stop believing in anything at all. That is the real victory of the party, not making people believe lies, but making them stop caring what truth is. In such a world, freedom doesn't die with a bang, it fades into apathy. This manipulation of truth feels eerily familiar in our modern times. We live surrounded by information, more than any generation before us, and yet truth feels slippery, contested, fragmented. The digital age has given us infinite voices, but also infinite distortions. Misinformation spreads faster than facts. Algorithms feed us what we already believe. And slowly, the line between fact and fiction begins to blur. Orwell's party didn't need social media, but its spirit lives on whenever truth becomes relative, whenever power decides what is real. When people laugh off lies as just politics, when facts are rewritten to fit agendas, when outrage replaces understanding, we are closer to Oceania than we realize. Another haunting symbol in Orwell's novel is Room 101. It is the final stage of re-education, the place where every prisoner meets their greatest fear. For Winston, it's rats. For others, it might be fire, darkness, or solitude. But what matters is not the fear itself, it's the surrender that follows. Room 101 represents the collapse of the self. When faced with unbearable terror, every person eventually betrays what they love most. And in that betrayal, the party wins completely. Because once you betray love, truth, and memory, you have nothing left but obedience. So much of Orwell's brilliance lies in his use of irony. He shows us a world where every institution claims to protect what it destroys. Peace ensures endless war. Love ensures absolute cruelty. Truth ensures infinite lies. And the citizens, robbed of meaning, learn to survive by submission. They chant slogans without thinking. They rewrite their memories without hesitation. They love their oppressors because the alternative is unbearable. And that's the darkest truth Orwell reveals, that tyranny doesn't always need force. It only needs people who stop thinking for themselves. By the end of this section, we see that 1984 isn't just a story about dictatorship. It's a mirror. It shows us what happens when comfort replaces conviction, when truth becomes negotiable, when power replaces principle. It reminds us that freedom begins not in the streets, but in the mind, and that the greatest rebellion is to see clearly when everyone else is blind. Every great story begins with conflict, but in 1984, the conflict is not between nations or armies. It is fought within the human soul. The battlefield is the mind, and the weapons are fear, loyalty, and memory. To understand Orwell's world, we must enter the hearts of his characters, not as heroes or villains, but as human beings slowly shaped, broken, and rebuilt by power. Let's begin with Winston Smith, the fragile heartbeat of this story. Winston is not a revolutionary. He's not brave in the conventional sense. He's weary, timid, often afraid. But inside him lives a quiet, unshakable instinct, the desire to know the truth. He doesn't seek glory or chaos. He only wants to remember. To feel. To exist as something more than a number in the party's endless machinery. This, in Orwell's world, is already rebellion. Winston's first act of defiance isn't a protest or a speech, it's the act of writing in a diary. A simple act of thought, but in a world where thinking is forbidden, it's the loudest form of resistance. When he writes, "Down with Big Brother," he isn't planning a revolution. He's whispering a truth that refuses to die. In that small, trembling act, Winston represents something deeply human, the refusal to let go of self-awareness. The need to say, "I exist. And I remember." But Winston is also tragic. He's not built for rebellion. His defiance is emotional, not strategic. He wants to feel alive in a world that kills feeling. His yearning for love, for tenderness, for a moment of privacy, these are not luxuries, they are his last pieces of humanity. And that's why his story hurts so deeply. Because we recognize ourselves in him, the small ways we conform, the silent ways we dream, the constant tug-of-war between truth and safety. Winston's struggle is not to overthrow the party. It's to remain human in a place where humanity is forbidden. Now, let's look at Julia, the woman who awakens Winston's last spark of hope. Julia is not an intellectual rebel. She doesn't question the party's ideology, she simply ignores it. Her rebellion is physical, immediate, instinctive. She breaks rules not because she dreams of freedom, but because she wants to feel alive. In her, Orwell captures a different kind of resistance, the quiet defiance of pleasure. In a world that preaches discipline, desire becomes revolution. Julia is practical where Winston is idealistic. She doesn't care about changing the world, she only wants to carve out small moments of freedom within it. When she sneaks away to the woods, when she trades black market chocolate, when she whispers, "I love you," in secret, she's fighting the party not through ideology, but through joy. She teaches Winston that rebellion doesn't always look like war. Sometimes, it's simply choosing to live fully in a system that wants you to live half alive. Yet Julia's resistance, like Winston's, is doomed, because the party understands the human heart better than anyone. They know that love, if left unchecked, creates loyalty deeper than fear. And so love must be destroyed. Then comes O'Brien, the most complex figure in Orwell's world. When Winston first meets O'Brien, he sees in him a reflection of hope. A man who seems to understand, who speaks in riddles that sound like truth, who dares to criticize the party in whispers. O'Brien becomes Winston's symbol of salvation, proof that sanity still exists somewhere. That intelligence and compassion might survive within the walls of power. But O'Brien is not what he seems. He is both savior and destroyer. He lures Winston in, gains his trust, and then becomes the architect of his undoing. When Winston is captured, it is O'Brien who oversees his torture. It is O'Brien who patiently dismantles his mind, not with rage, but with reason. He tells Winston that reality is not external. That truth exists only within the mind, and the party controls the mind. Winston protests, "Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 makes 4. And O'Brien replies calmly, "Sometimes, Winston, it is 5. Sometimes it is 3. Sometimes it is all of them at once." O'Brien isn't just a villain. He's the voice of pure power, the logic of tyranny taken to perfection. He doesn't torture out of cruelty, but out of philosophy. He believes that power isn't a means to an end. It is the end itself. Imagine a boot, he tells Winston, stamping on a human face, forever. This is the party's vision of eternity. A world where domination is endless, where victory is not peace, but perpetual control. What makes O'Brien terrifying is not his brutality, it's his conviction. He believes in what he's doing. To him, the destruction of the individual mind is not evil, it is progress. And in that, Orwell captures the psychology of every authoritarian system. Those who enforce it rarely see themselves as villains. They see themselves as guardians of order, protectors of truth, saviors of humanity, even as they destroy it. O'Brien doesn't hate Winston. He admires him. But he also understands that Winston must be broken, because the existence of even one independent thought is an infection that threatens the system. The fourth character, though never human, is the party itself. It is not one man, not one government, but a living organism built from millions of small acts of fear and obedience. Its genius lies in how it merges power with belief. It doesn't simply demand loyalty, it manufactures it. Through endless propaganda, the party reshapes not just what people know, but what they feel. People don't obey because they're forced to. They obey because they no longer remember how not to. Every screen, every slogan, every correction to history teaches them one lesson: reality is fragile. Truth is flexible. And survival belongs to those who conform. The party's ultimate victory is psychological. It doesn't just destroy its enemies, it makes them love their destruction. And so we come to the heart of Winston's transformation. In the torture chambers of the Ministry of Love, Winston's mind begins to unravel. Sleep deprivation, hunger, electric shocks, each step designed not to kill, but to erase. At first, he resists. He clings to logic, to memory, to the belief that truth exists. He tells O'Brien, "You can't control reality." And O'Brien smiles, "You are mistaken, Winston. We control reality because we control the mind." Piece by piece, Winston's defenses crumble. Pain becomes confusion, confusion becomes surrender. And yet, through all the agony, there remains one small refuge in his heart, his love for Julia. He tells himself that as long as he loves her, even silently, he is still human. That love, invisible and wordless, is his final act of defiance. But O'Brien knows. He has been waiting for this. He brings Winston to room 101, the place where every prisoner faces the thing they fear most. For Winston, it's rats, their teeth gnashing, their claws scraping. And in that instant of absolute terror, he betrays Julia. He screams, "Do it to her, not me." In that moment, his love shatters. And the last piece of Winston's soul dies. When he is released, he is no longer a man. He walks through the streets of London, thin, broken, emotionless. He spends his days drinking, listening to news of wars that may not even exist. When he thinks of Julia, he feels nothing but a faint sense of guilt. They meet once more, two strangers who have betrayed each other. And they both admit, "Yes, I betrayed you." There is no anger. No grief. Only emptiness. The party has succeeded. It has erased love, individuality, and resistance. Winston now looks at Big Brother's face on the telescreen and feels tears of devotion. The final words echo through him, he loved Big Brother. Orwell's genius is not in depicting a world of violence, but in showing how violence reshapes the human mind. The party doesn't win through strength. It wins through understanding. It studies the human heart so deeply that it learns exactly how to make it break, and then rebuilds it in its own image. This is psychological domination perfected, not the destruction of the body, but the colonization of the soul. And it forces us to ask, how much of our own thinking is truly our own? How easily could we be made to love what destroys us? That question is the timeless fear at the core of 1984. That freedom is not taken from us in a single blow, but surrendered slowly, thought by thought, until obedience feels like safety, and submission feels like peace. The cold fluorescent light hums above Winston's head. He is strapped to a steel bed in the Ministry of Love, a place with no love, only power. The walls are white, sterile, and windowless. There is no sense of time here. No day. No night. Only endless interrogation. He doesn't know how long he's been here. Days blur into weeks, weeks into something worse. Pain has become his only clock. O'Brien stands before him, calm, patient, almost kind. But his kindness is the cruelty of a god dismantling a mortal soul. He tells Winston that he is here to be cured. Cured of his insanity, his belief in truth, his love for Julia, his rebellion against Big Brother. Winston's body is frail, his mind foggy, but somewhere within him, a spark still flickers. He still believes there is such a thing as reality, something beyond the party's lies. He tells O'Brien, the party can't control the stars. They can't make 2 + 2 = 5. O'Brien smiles faintly, as if pitying a child. He presses a lever. Electric pain floods Winston's body until his vision goes black. "Do you see now, Winston?" O'Brien asks softly. "If the party says 2 + 2 = 5, then it is 5. It is not about mathematics. It is about power." Between the shocks and the confessions, O'Brien begins his lectures. He explains the purpose of the party, not to achieve happiness or justice, but control. Absolute, eternal control. He says, the object of power is power. The party rules not for the people, but for itself. They control the past by rewriting it. They control the present through fear. And they control the future by teaching every generation to forget that life could ever be different. History, identity, love, and reason, all are clay in their hands. Winston listens, half-conscious, half-delirious, but somewhere inside, he still clings to one truth, his love for Julia. She is the last fragment of humanity left within him. The last thing they cannot take away. Until Room 101. Room 101, the final betrayal. Winston is dragged into a small, dim chamber. The air smells faintly of rust and terror. He knows this is Room 101, the place where prisoners meet the thing they fear most in the world. O'Brien looks at him almost tenderly. He says, "Everyone knows what is in Room 101, Winston. You already know, too." Then, the door opens. A metal cage is brought in, filled with rats. They squeal and scratch against the bars, their yellow teeth glinting. O'Brien brings the cage close to Winston's face, the smell of filth and hunger filling the air. "Do you remember what you said you feared above all else?" O'Brien asks. "This is it." Winston's heart stops. He screams. He struggles against the straps. He begs. The rats claw and gnash inches from his eyes as O'Brien's calm voice cuts through his panic. "All you need to do, Winston, is surrender. Confess not just with your words, but with your heart." And then comes the moment, the breaking point. In pure terror, Winston shouts the words that end his rebellion forever, "Do it to her. Not me. Do it to Julia." The cage is withdrawn. O'Brien nods, satisfied. The deed is done. It is not enough for the party to destroy its enemies. It must destroy what they love. It must ensure that loyalty to anything other than Big Brother is impossible. Winston has betrayed Julia, and in doing so, he has betrayed himself. The man who once wrote, "I hate Big Brother," in his secret diary is gone. All that remains is a shell, an obedient subject, hollowed out by fear. The aftermath. Time passes. Winston is released back into the world, or what remains of it. He is thinner, slower, and older. He spends his days in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, sitting alone with a cup of oily gin, staring blankly at the telescreen. The war continues, as it always does. The party announces victories that never happened and defeats that are erased by morning. Posters of Big Brother cover every wall, his eyes gentle, his smile eternal. Winston no longer questions the lies. He accepts them without thought. When the telescreen announces that Oceania is victorious, he believes it completely. When it says that 2 + 2 = 5, he smiles faintly and nods. He occasionally remembers Julia, like a dream fading at dawn. One day, they meet by chance. They stand awkwardly in the cold, gray light, speaking softly. They admit they betrayed each other. There is no anger, no love, no spark left between them. They part without looking back. Winston returns to his usual seat in the cafe. He listens to the telescreen, drinking glass after glass of gin, until the voice of Big Brother fills the air once more, praising the party's latest triumph. And in that moment, something shifts within him. He looks up at Big Brother's face on the screen, the calm eyes, the reassuring smile. Tears fill his own eyes. He feels warmth spreading through his chest. Love. Devotion. Gratitude. He whispers the final words of his humanity. He loved Big Brother. The true ending. And just like that, Orwell's story ends, quietly, brutally, completely. There is no revolution. No happy ending. Only surrender. Winston's journey is not the story of a man who fought and won. It is the story of a man who thought, and lost everything for it. It is the story of how power, when absolute, can reach not just into the body, but into the soul. The party doesn't just punish rebellion. It erases the possibility of rebellion. It teaches its citizens to love their chains, to believe their servitude is freedom, their ignorance is strength. When Winston finally loves Big Brother, it is not redemption, it is the victory of the system. The complete annihilation of the individual. A moment of stillness. And yet, Orwell leaves us with something haunting: silence. After all the noise of slogans and screams, there is only the stillness of surrender. A stillness that forces us to ask, could this happen to us? Could truth be twisted so completely that people stop caring what is real? Could surveillance become so normal that freedom feels unnecessary? Could language itself, words, ideas, meanings, be rewritten until thinking becomes impossible? In Orwell's world, this has already happened. In ours, perhaps it has only begun. When the story of Winston Smith ends, the world of 1984 remains, cold, gray, and terrifyingly permanent. Big Brother still watches. The party still rules. And truth, that fragile thread that once connected people to reality, has been cut. But the deeper question is not about Winston. It is about us. Orwell did not write 1984 to predict the future. He wrote it to prevent it. He wanted us to recognize the warning signs, the slow erosion of truth, the normalization of control, and the quiet surrender of our minds. So, what lessons lie hidden in this dark, dystopian mirror? 1. The war for truth. At the heart of Orwell's novel lies one fundamental question: who controls truth? In Oceania, truth is not discovered, it is manufactured. If the party says the Earth has always been at war with Eurasia, then it has always been so. If the party says 2 and 2 make 5, then the world must rearrange itself to fit that lie. This control over truth is not maintained through violence alone. It's maintained through language, through slogans, through repetition, through the rewriting of the past. Every newspaper, every photograph, every record of reality is adjusted to fit the present moment. The past is rewritten, the future predetermined. There is only the eternal now, the now of the party. And isn't that eerily familiar? Today, we live in an age of information, but also, an age of misinformation. The Ministry of Truth may not exist by name, but its spirit lurks in algorithms, headlines, and echo chambers. We are bombarded with narratives, political, commercial, cultural, each one claiming to be the truth. The line between fact and opinion blurs, and confusion becomes a weapon. Orwell once wrote, "The further a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those who speak it." And we see it now, the polarization, the outrage, the war of words where truth itself becomes subjective. In that sense, Winston's struggle is still alive, the struggle to see clearly in a fog of deception. 2. Surveillance and the end of privacy. Big Brother is watching you. That phrase has become a cultural shorthand for surveillance and control, but in Orwell's time, it was only a nightmare of the imagination. Today, it is almost reality. We live surrounded by cameras, sensors, microphones, data trails. Our phones know where we go. Our browsers know what we think about. Our devices listen when we speak and predict what we desire before we even ask. Unlike Oceania, no single party forces us to submit. We do it willingly, trading privacy for convenience, comfort, and connection. We click "I agree" without reading the terms. We post our lives online. We let corporations and governments map our thoughts, our habits, our fears. It is no longer a telescreen in every home. It is the screen in our own hands. Orwell imagined a world where power watched us from above. But perhaps the more dangerous truth is that we now watch ourselves, voluntarily feeding the system that studies us. Surveillance has become invisible, quiet, efficient, accepted. And that makes it even more powerful than Orwell's imagined terror. 3. Language as control, the power of words. One of Orwell's most brilliant ideas was Newspeak, the party's new language designed to shrink thought itself. If you remove words like freedom, justice, or love, then soon people cannot even think about those concepts. Language shapes thought. And by limiting language, the party limits imagination, rebellion, and even hope. We see echoes of that today in the manipulation of language, in slogans, marketing, and online discourse. Words like freedom, patriotism, truth, and justice are constantly redefined to suit agendas. Complex debates are reduced to hashtags. Outrage replaces understanding. And meaning, real, nuanced meaning, begins to disappear. When words lose their integrity, thought follows. And when thought dies, freedom dies with it. So the question is not whether Newspeak exists, but how we can resist it. By valuing language, nuance, and honest dialogue. By refusing to let slogans think for us. By daring to speak with precision, empathy, and truth. 4. The psychology of control. Orwell's world is built not on chains, but on the manipulation of the mind. The party understands that to truly control people, you must make them love their oppressor and fear their freedom. Through constant fear, isolation, and propaganda, the citizens of Oceania no longer know where the truth ends and the lie begins. They stop resisting not because they are forced, but because they no longer can imagine an alternative. This is what makes the story so chilling. Winston's defeat is not just physical. It is psychological. When he finally says, he loved Big Brother, he isn't pretending. He truly means it. His mind has been rewritten. And that is Orwell's deepest warning, that tyranny succeeds not when it silences you, but when it makes you believe that silence is peace. In our world, control often takes softer forms, through fear of missing out, social validation, the hunger for likes, the need to belong. The tools of manipulation have evolved. But the principle remains the same: control the mind, and you control everything. Hope and human resilience. Despite its bleakness, 1984 is not entirely hopeless. Because even in defeat, Winston's story reminds us that the human spirit can resist, if only for a while. That spark of thought, that moment of doubt, that whisper of, what if, it matters. Every time someone questions authority, demands transparency, protects truth, or defends freedom of speech, they carry the spirit of Winston Smith. Every time a whistleblower speaks out, or a journalist risks their safety to reveal the facts, or an ordinary citizen refuses to accept propaganda, Orwell's warning echoes through them. Freedom is not something granted by governments or systems. It is a habit of the mind, a willingness to think, question, and seek truth, even when it's dangerous. Our world today, Orwell's shadow. When Orwell wrote 1984, he was writing about the totalitarian regimes of his era, Stalin's Russia, Hitler's Germany. But the brilliance of his vision lies in how easily it adapts to every generation. Today, it's not a dictator shouting from balconies. It's algorithms curating what we see, echo chambers reinforcing what we believe, and digital noise drowning what truly matters. We live in a time when attention is currency and distraction is control. Where reality itself can be edited, filtered, and sold. And where the battle for truth happens not in streets or parliaments, but in the pixels on our screens. We must ask ourselves, are we thinking for ourselves, or merely reacting to what we're shown? Are we free, or simply comfortable in our own digital Oceania? Because Orwell's nightmare does not begin with oppression. It begins with indifference, with people who stop caring about truth because lies are easier. Lessons for the future. So what does 1984 ask of us? Not despair, but awareness. Not rebellion through violence, but rebellion through consciousness. It asks us to guard truth fiercely. To question narratives, even the ones we agree with. To cherish privacy, protect our thoughts, and resist manipulation. To speak clearly when others fall silent. It reminds us that freedom begins in the mind, with the courage to see, to name, to think. And it challenges us with a simple but profound truth: if we stop defending our right to think freely, someone else will do the thinking for us. The final reflection. As the story of Winston Smith fades into silence, Orwell leaves us standing in front of a mirror. And in that mirror, we see not the face of Big Brother, but our own. We see our phones, our cameras, our social feeds. We see the stories we are told, and the ones we choose to believe. We see how easily convenience becomes control, how fear becomes obedience, and how truth becomes negotiable. But we also see possibility, the power of awareness, empathy, and choice. Because even in Orwell's darkest vision, the very act of reading, of thinking, of remembering, is resistance. Every person who keeps asking questions keeps the light of freedom alive. Every honest word, every act of courage, every defense of truth pushes back against the shadow. So perhaps the ending of 1984 is not just a tragedy. Perhaps it is also a challenge. A reminder that freedom is fragile, but not lost. That truth is vulnerable, but not dead. And that as long as we have the strength to see, to speak, and to care, Big Brother can never fully win. This is the lesson of George Orwell's masterpiece, Truth Matters. Freedom matters. And the human spirit, though often crushed, always remembers how to rise.